Hi, good afternoon. I propose to get started. We will have a very short interruption when they will bring the seats in the room. A bit more people showed up than what we were planning for, so thanks for your active participation. We'll see if we can switch the room for the next session tomorrow. So this is the first dedicated session on VTOL AMCs that will take all this afternoon with several experts from EASA coming to present, and also tomorrow morning. Tomorrow afternoon, then we'll be all back in the big room for the final plenary. So I'm calling on the stage the first speaker of this afternoon session, Anna van Groote from Eurocae, and she will present the work of the working group 112.
Thank you very much, Clément. And for those who are standing, there's 2 free seats in the first row, so it's like in school. If you want. Anyway, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Anna van Groote. I'm Director Technical Program at Eurocae. And maybe just to start off, to see, I hope you had a nice lunch, but I hope it was not too nice, so that you're not falling asleep now, or that you're still awake and re-energized. How many of you do know Eurocae? Okay, so that's quite a few already. Eurocae, first of all, is not what maybe the name suggests. Yes, we do have very strong roots in Europe, Euro. We're not, the C stands for civil. We're not only civil anymore. We have a lot of cooperation with the military and a lot of inputs from the military. A is the only letter in there which is still correct, because we're only doing standards for aviation. And E also is not correct anymore. The E stands for equipment, and we'll see in a second we're doing much more than equipment in the meantime. We heard this morning, safety is the utmost priority, and this is also true for the standards development, which is obviously a big part. But here we all need to work together. Everyone needs to do its bit of it, its part of it, so that we can come to a good and very safe solution in the end. Inputs for standardization come from, and I'll be very brief on this because I really want to focus on what we do in Working Group 112, but just to give you a little bit of feedback here, or input. Inputs for standardization really come from our membership, and our membership today is over 300 members, manufacturers, all kinds of manufacturers, airborne, OEMs, airborne equipment, but also ground equipment, R&D, César obviously in Europe, next-gen carrots for the ATM side of things, but also a lot of other either more individual or bigger research programs. Regulators at the national level, but obviously also EASA on the national level. Just to cite a few, we have the FAA, for example, is a full member, Singapore, Japan, New Zealand, so quite a bit of outreach beyond Europe. Organizations like Eurocontrol being a big one, but also lots of the stakeholder associations, European Cockpit Association, IFATCA, CANSO, all kinds of organizations really. Service providers then, airlines, ANSPs, the airports, really all kinds of service providers. Other SDOs, RTCA and SAE being our prime partners here. And then obviously at the international level, ICAO. We don't work in isolation. Really, Eurocae is only providing a platform. We have a lot of partnerships and partnership agreements. ICAO, we are a recognized international organization in ICAO. There's only 4 standardization bodies currently recognized in that status. We're also fulfilling the Code of Good Practice for standardization of the World Trade Organization, one of the few standardization bodies for the aviation sector, which is recognized by the WTO to do that. EASA, I already mentioned. We have a very close link here. The European Commission, César joint undertaking, and the deployment manager, so where we see a really unique full link between the R&D all the way towards the deployment. Eurocontrol I mentioned, RTCA, about 50% of our activities are joined with RTCA, meaning that we develop and publish technically identical standards. And with SAE, we have a very similar cooperation agreement for about 10 to 15% of our standards. We coordinate our standardization activities for ATM, UAS, and cybersecurity through these, is there a pointer on here? Yes, through these coordination groups, which are the European ATM Standards Coordination Group, UAS on the EUSCG, and cybersecurity for the ECSCG. We work along with other international standards development organizations, ISO and ASD STAN, just to name a few, CEN, CENELEC, and ETSI on the European level, other SDOs as required, though we don't have formal collaboration agreements with them at this stage. And I mentioned CANSO, ECA, IATA on the airline side, IAOPA, and IFATCA. Today we have about 300 members. The tendency is growing and growing very fastly. 40 active working groups, of which VTOL is one. And all of those are supported by more than 2,500 experts. I always say you don't want me to write the standards for you. We really need the experts to be in the room, to bring their expertise, to contribute, and to write the standards in the end, to make sure that what we publish is relevant, is achievable, and is not over stipulating things either. As I mentioned before, we're coming from the E in Eurocae stands for equipment. We're coming effectively from the avionics equipment on board of an aircraft, communication, navigation, surveillance equipment. In the meantime, we do a lot more. We have expanded over the years into ATM systems. We do a lot of work for the airports. SWIM, system-wide information management, is becoming more and more important. On the electrical side, with lightning protection, now we're launching a working group on high voltage applications. Security, and here we mean mostly cybersecurity, so we're not dealing with the airport security part, but with information security. AIS Met Data Link, ARPAS, VTOL, general aviation to a certain extent. And then a couple of areas which really are evolving quite quickly. Fuel cells and hybrid propulsion, space, any kind of space-based activities, space-based services, space-based applications, future space travel, space traffic management, to only name a few. Counter-UAS. We're actually launching a working group on counter-UAS later this week, and next-generation aviation professionals. Now, if you look at this list of activities, there's a lot of work that is either already published or ongoing, which is quite useful for both the Rotorcraft but also for the VTOL community. To name only a few, we've talked about system safety assessment, we've talked about environmental qualification, high voltage is here on the list, cybersecurity, we have a whole suite of documents for the cybersecurity of the aircraft, but also for organizational cybersecurity. So what we really did was, when we launched Working Group 112, was to look at, first of all, to look at the gaps and to instruct the working group to really focus on those and to reuse as much as possible of the existing standards. Just to look a little bit into the link between regulations and standards, the regulators increasingly make use of performance-based, requirements-based regulations. EASA, but also the FAA and ICAO more and more refer to industry standards to provide the how to comply with the high-level requirement. Standards here can be either in reaction to a regulation, a mode that we're in a little bit at the moment, but also be forward-looking and really create a level playing field for the industry, create a competitive advantage, and then the regulator will jump onto it and provide a regulatory frame here as well. Standards are then referenced by the regulator either by EASA in the form of ETSO, for example, or as AMC. EU legislation, the FA makes quite often reference to our standards. Same for ICAO. Traditional way is that it works through the ETSO, which makes reference to a MOPS, to a minimum operational performance standard, but also for more general standards like software or environmental qualifications. Our process really is transparent and open. And open here meaning really open. You don't need to be a member. You don't need to be closely linked and contributing to a working group to be able to contribute. You only need to give us your name so that we know how we can contact you in case we have a question. And that is really important because we're basing all of our work on the principle of consensus. We validate a couple of times during the whole development process that the standards that we're either at the proposal stage of development or that are coming to maturity are relevant, so that they actually will be used by the industry, that they're timely, that they perform or prescribe levels of performance that are correct, and that the content of the standard is appropriate and correct, and all of that leads to the standards being worldwide recognized and worldwide applied. And it's really by the industry for the industry. Quite a classical document development process. If you're familiar with how most standardization organizations work, this will not be news to you. But once the document development is approved, the standard is being drafted, it goes through the open consultation, and here again it's really open. You only need to register on our website, and you can access all of the final drafts and provide comments back to us. All of the comments have to be resolved, so dispositioned, and again we're putting a lot of emphasis here on the transparency of the dispositioning of the comments, and then the document is approved and published. Coming now to the working group 112 on VTOL. We started the discussion with EASA more or less a year ago. And we went to our council and said, look, we need something that is quicker and that will still deliver the results that we need and the standards and the high quality that we need, but we need something that's a little bit more leaner in terms of the standards development process. And this is really what we mean with a lean process. We launched this as a pilot project. We adapted the process to gain time and minimize administrative overhead, so really to give most time to the technical discussions, but to still keep our process and the procedures in place as we have it today, so that we have or that we can safeguard the high levels of quality and the main principles of our standards development process, which are openness, transparency, and consensus. So they're so dear to the heart of the council because they guarantee the quality of the standards and the reputation of the standards. So we adapted the process just a little bit. The decision-making and tasking is done by the working group itself. The open consultation is shortened from 45 days, as we do for all of our regular standards, to 28 days, because we consider that the standards, and we'll come to the details of the standards in a second, but we consider that the standards are a bit shorter, which justifies a little bit a shorter consultation period. And the approval is shortened to 7 days, and it's a secretariat responsibility. So here we only approve the procedure, so we will look at whether all comments have been dispositioned, etc., but we will not approve the contents. We leave this really to the expert judgment. So in total, we can be from the launching of the open consultation to the publication in as little as 8 weeks, which is quite challenging, but quite a reduced time frame, really. So when the special condition was then published, and I won't go into details here as Lionel presented it this morning already, but really what we did was we looked at the special condition, at the different requirements that are in there, which correctly are there to be more flexible, to certify innovative state-of-the-art systems and technology, and to establish a common set of conditions for the certification of the new VTOL. And the accepted means of compliance will come through the industry standards from Working Group 112. And this is really an effort which is a little bit unprecedented in the way that from the very beginning we've sat down with EASA, we've looked at the special condition together, we've looked at the requirements, and we've established a list of standards that are needed to support the special condition. And this has come to the priorities, as we call it, that were agreed between EASA and Eurocae, and which are being revalidated every now and then, or regularly through the steering committee of our working group. So what we did then was that we held a stakeholder workshop, because, as I said, it's not us who are the brains of all of this, it's really all of you. And we need to make sure that the standards that we develop are those, and that we put on the priority list even to start with, are those that you need in order to be able to move forward. So we've held a workshop beginning of June of this year with over 70 delegates, and we've had to cut this down and limit it to really one representative per organization, because it was vastly sold out within a few days of putting it online. We've had presentations from EASA, from other SDOs, but really mostly from industry, so that we could refine and retune a little bit this priorities list. And with that, we moved on. We created Working Group 112. We kicked that off just at the end of June, so 3 weeks later. It is chaired by Oliver from Volocopter and Lionel from Lilium. The secretariat is being held by us, by my colleague Sebastian, who's also in the room, and another colleague from the secretariat. It has very quickly grown to be over 200 members of the group, and this is not, in many groups we see it's a lot of observers and a lot of people just tagging along to see what's going on. Here really there's quite a bit of active contributors amongst those 200s. Those are from industry, there's a couple of airline representatives, airports, ATM, R&D organizations, but also authorities. EASA, we've seen this morning, Lionel mentioned it, is in each and every one of the subgroups, but also a lot of national authorities. The UK, for example, France, but also New Zealand, the FAA, and there was a question this morning about the FAA contribution or coordination with this activity, so the FAA is involved in the working group, and also since a few weeks now, Singapore has joined the group. So it really has more than just a European outreach. The group is structured in a way that we can ensure both a coordination layer, which is given through the steering committee, where EASA, Eurocae, Secretariat, the working group leadership, and also each of the subgroup leaders come together. But also to give maximum flexibility to the subgroups who are working on electrical systems, lift, thrust, safety, flight, and ground infrastructure. And we'll go into each of these in a little bit in some details. So the steering committee consists of the working group chairs, subgroup leaders, Eurocae and EASA. It convenes every 2 weeks to coordinate the work really from a bird's eye perspective. It maintains an overarching view. It also sometimes needs to nudge along progress a little bit, and coordinates with EASA activities. This priorities list, which I mentioned a few minutes ago, is part of their tasking here. And they ensure awareness and coordination with other working groups in Eurocae. For example, there's a coordination at the moment going on a system safety assessment which the steering committee is actively following, and also with other partner organizations or events. At the plenary level, the working group is developing a concept for operations, because we thought, starting from the special condition, we needed a framework that allows the generation of a set of consistent VTOL standards from the Eurocae side going forward. So the ConOps is one of the first documents which is being developed and which will come to maturity and to open consultation hopefully very soon. It might have to be updated as soon as the other documents mature a little bit more, but it's really there to provide an overarching framework. It will provide generic information such as terminology, generic system overview and interfaces, look at the different stakeholders and roles, operation profiles, mission characteristics, etc. Subgroup 1 is looking at electrical systems, in the first instance focusing quite a bit on batteries, crashworthiness, recharging, high voltage, so there will certainly be a link to the other high voltage activity that is going on in Eurocae. They're working on 4 deliverables here. At the moment, a process standard, which will be the overarching guidance document here, and 3 guidance and technical standards to come out, all for open consultation towards the end of February next year. The second subgroup is working on lift and thrust, looking at fire zone, CMA for the lift and thrust unit rotor burst, working on 3 guidance documents, 2 of which are progressing rather rapidly and should come out towards the end of March for open consultation, and the common mode analysis one should be following not too late thereafter. The third subgroup is looking at operational safety, hazard and safety assessment, specific risk assessment, occupant safety, emergency landing, but also, and this is a little bit hidden, it's not in the title, on security, so information security guidance. And here they're really looking at the other information security documents and standards that have already been published, and are really looking only at what specifically is needed to support VTOL operations. These standards should come out also towards the end of February, end of March timeframe for consultation. The fourth subgroup is focusing on flight, and we'll hear a little bit from our colleagues in the second presentation, I think, on this. 3 documents being developed here. Mission profile definition, fly-by-wire control systems, and environmental conditions and test procedures. So again, specific, whatever is specific for VTOL operations, to be not to replace ED14 DO160 here, but to look at what is specific really to VTOL. And the final group is looking at ground infrastructure, charging infrastructure, and landing sites. These documents are expected to come out, probably the landing sites document will come out a little bit before the charging infrastructure one, but these documents are expected to come out also towards the end of the first quarter of next year. In total, we have today 18 documents under development. First publications are expected, as I said, to come for open consultation end of February. So we look for a publication end of the first quarter, beginning of the second quarter of 2020. All of this bearing in mind that we've only launched the working group end of June of last year. So this is a total of just 9 months from initiation of the work to the publication of the first documents. This, in terms of standardization, I don't know how many of you have been on a Eurocae working group before, is quite an achievement here, I think, and we can really give a hand to all of those who are leading the working group and who are contributing to the working group, because without all of you, this wouldn't be possible. We will continue after this. The main focus at the moment is to complete the current work program, so to get the documents out towards the timelines that I've just sketched out. The subgroup efforts will continue to mature these drafts, and the steering committee will keep pushing them and keep beating the drums to manage the progress here. The next plenary meetings are at the end of January and then at the end of March, where we expect to launch the open consultations. So please register on our news blog, look at the documents, even if you're not member of the working group. You don't need to be a member of Eurocae. Just give us your name and upload your comments so that we can validate and further improve the standards. And then the steering committee will be looking at what additional standardization activities are needed. So these 18 documents are just the first wave of priorities. I'm sure there will be more, and then there will be further activities to follow on. And again, we have to shape these standards together. It's not me who's writing it, it's not Oliver who's writing it. It really has to be a collective effort of all of those to develop the accepted means of compliance by the community, for the community, to support VTOL certification in Europe and beyond. So this is really a unique opportunity, a unique collaboration between EASA and Eurocae here in the closeness of the link between the two organizations. So I can only offer this as a platform to use. For further information and to be notified of the different progresses, we have a couple of publications. We've brought the broadcast magazine, which is outside next to the registration desk. Sebastian also has a few copies if you haven't picked up one yet. But please really make sure you register to our news blog. All of the open consultation announcements will be on there, and there will also be some guidance on how you can access the documents once they're out. So please register on eurocae.net or follow us on Twitter. All of the announcements will be out there as well. And of course, I'm available for any questions, and I'm sure so will be our chairs who are in the room and Sebastian who's supporting me as well. Thank you very much.